Yeah, first of all, let's introduce myself. My name is Wilhelm. I'm a systems engineer at NetWays for 3 years now. I do a lot of open source stuff, basically on the managed hosting and managed services side, what we do at NetWays for our customers. And what I really like to do is the graphing components and all around it. So the talk will be about graphing in combination with Icinga, Graphite, and Grafana. This is a really base question because I think everybody does graphing right now. Is there anybody here who doesn't graph anything? No, I don't think so. But why do we do it? We do the graphing not just for fun, but we do it to get a better readability. We do graphing to compare data and to have a historical view. With graphs, we can go back in time and see what happened at certain points in the time. And we can present this data in a quick way. So we don't have to do much things to get the views, to compare the data. It's just a few clicks to get the graphs. But what we don't want to do is to have views like this, because this is the starting point for, I guess, most of every sysadmin, where he does an SSH into the Linux box and does top and IO-top and all these things. But this is not scaling, because you can do this with one machine, but not with like 100 or thousands. And you don't have an historical view. And the other point is that nobody can read this in a quick way. What we do want to do is have a view like this, because in this view you can, on the first view, see that there is something wrong because there's a red line, and you can see that there is something happening because the graph is growing, and it's easy to understand in a quick way. With graphs, we can tell stories, what happened in the past and what leads us to the things that are happening now. But how can we do that? First things first, the components I will use are Icinga, Graphite, and Grafana. And the base of this is that we can collect data, we can store data, and we can visualize data in 3 easy steps. I will start with the Icinga component, which is collecting data. And yeah, in Icinga 2, everything is a feature. Like every new function that is implemented, like graphing or logging or even checking itself, it's a feature, because Icinga 2 is modular based. And like this, Graphite is a feature. Features can collect data, or they can store it, they can forward data, or they can make data available, like live status. Icinga has a lot of features, and Graphite is one of them, which I will be using in this setup. When Icinga does a check, you configured, like, for example, a check HTTP on a host with some thresholds. It will give you an output like this, and it will tell you, okay, the check is critical, or it's okay, or it's warning. This is the information that you need for alerting. But what Icinga also will do is it will send you, in most of the cases, some performance data. Performance data in the typical Icinga plugin output is separated by a pipe. It's the normal text output, just separated by a pipe. And it will tell us something more about the check. It will not tell us only it is available, but it will also tell us what time did it need to get this HTTP request, and how many bytes did it send. These performance data we can forward to Graphite, and Icinga will parse these performance data, will bring them into a better shape and send it to Graphite. To enable the Graphite feature is very easy, because you can just use the CLI command to do so. It's a one-liner, like Icinga 2 feature enable Graphite, and the configuration will be added to your Icinga 2 configuration. You will need to restart Icinga 2 to get it really enabled. But what you also will need to do is you have to configure an object. Like everything else, the Graphite writer in Icinga 2 is an object. Because of this, you can create also multiple Graphite writer objects. For example, for redundancy, you can send your performance data to multiple Graphite servers. So it's pretty easy because you just have to set a host and a port where your Graphite is listening, and there it goes. The second part of the collect, store, and visualize is Graphite. And this is maybe the hardest part in the setup because setting up Graphite isn't easy every time. But in my opinion, it's the best thing you can do is to install it via the pip Python package management, because you will get always the updates and every time you have the current version of Graphite. With Graphite, we can store the data. This is the part which Icinga 2 doesn't do because it just forwards it. In Graphite, we can store the data into files. And Graphite is also able to render graphs. Graphite consists in 3 components. It's a Whisper library, which is capable to do the actual storing. It's a carbon cache called. This is the actual receiver of the data. This is the thing where you send your performance data to. And there's a component called Graphite Web. And Graphite Web has an API implemented. With this API, you can render graphs in PNG format, or in JSON, or in CSV. What Grafana does is it uses this Graphite Web API to render these graphs. But it doesn't do it like the normal Graphite Web interface with these PNG graphs. It retrieves these pure data points in JSON format. So it can handle everything by itself. The other thing about this is that using the Graphite Web API, Grafana is capable to do every functionality Graphite Web also does. Graphite Web has a lot of functions to manipulate or to filter the data points. All these functions are also implemented in Grafana, so nothing gets lost if you use another tool for visualizing data. And this is what a typical graph in Graphite Web looks like. This is not the thing most of us want to do because, well, we like more beautiful things, and that's where Grafana comes into place. As I said, Grafana uses the Graphite Web API to retrieve the data in JSON format, and it keeps all functionality Graphite Web has, so you lose nothing from Graphite Web. But it adds some more functionality to it. So you have the functions from Graphite Web, plus some more functions that Grafana itself provides to you. So from this graph, you can go in a short time to a more beautiful graph like this one. This is the check HTTP check I used before as an example. And in my opinion, it looks just way better than the Graphite Web one. And Grafana itself is a little bit better. The usability of Grafana is better than the one in Graphite Web. Because you can add in Grafana dashboards and you can save your dashboards. You can do that in Graphite Web as well, but it's a lot more difficult. Yeah, and this is just a base graph that you can create with Icinga 2, Graphite, and Grafana. But you can add even more value to this graph, because at this point we only see that the HTTP check is doing something it doesn't do normally. The values are growing and going down again. With Icinga 2, we can add, for example, thresholds to this graph. Grafana is able to add thresholds itself, but these thresholds added at Grafana side are hard configured. So you have to put those thresholds in your graph by yourself. In this example, using Icinga 2, you will get the thresholds from your Icinga 2 configuration. And if you change your thresholds in your Icinga 2 config, they will change also in your graph here. So no manual work for you. Yeah, this way you can correlate your data, so you can see, okay, my HTTP check is going slow for some reason, and you can also see that it is so slow that it goes above the critical threshold, and this means for you that probably there was an alert on this check. To do this, you have to add some more to your configuration, to your Graphite writer configuration. There's a parameter called enable send thresholds. This is by default set to false, to not send data out that you maybe don't need, but if you want it, you have to enable it. And send thresholds will send you not only the pure perf data, but also the thresholds for this check. Yeah, based on this graph we saw before, you can add even more to it because there are more features in the Graphite writer. For example, you can add downtimes to your graph. And this way the graph becomes even better because you can tell even more about your situation and what happened in the past. Because at this point you can see, okay, the HTTP check went above the critical point and there was a downtime set for it. So maybe it was planned. You can tell even more about what happened, even without asking anyone in the company if there was something, or even without searching in history logs or anything. It's the same in this case. There's a parameter to get this data called enable send metadata, where downtimes are only a part of these metadata. There's even more. By default, this option is set to false, so you have to enable it. And with these metadata, there doesn't come only downtimes, but also some other things like what was the state of this check at this point, or what was the execution time of this check. So you can find out in your graphs which checks do take the most execution time, or latency. There are even more. I didn't list them all. And there are even more coming. I think in the next release we will also have, besides downtimes, also acknowledgements. So you can use them as well in your graphs to just enhance your view on your dashboards. There is a thing, Graphite and events, that most people didn't know about or don't know about. Does anyone use Graphite in combination with events? Thought so, because this is not very popular, but there is such a thing. Because Graphite can store not only data points, but Graphite can also store events. The database you configure when you configure your Graphite web can be used to store log events, for example. You can send these logs, these events via an API. It's a REST API, so you can send it from everywhere. And Grafana is able to query those events and display them on your graphs. These events are stored in the default Graphite database, which can be a MySQL or PostgreSQL. You can send these events from everywhere because it's just plain HTTP and a REST API. For example, you can have a Git hook on your server side, which sends every time an event you do a commit or a merge or a push or anything. They're pretty easy to send because you just define a type, what type of event this is you're sending, and you add some tags to the event. Adding these tags with these tags you can do searches on these events later on in your Grafana. And last, you can add the whole message, what happened at this point of time. And that's it. This event will be stored in Graphite. The result of this can be something like this, where you have your HTTP check, which grows in time, and you have thresholds that tell you, okay, it's above the threshold. Probably there was an alert sent out, but probably not because there is a downtime. And the new thing you have now is, I don't know if you can see this, here is an event which is marked by a vertical line, which tells you, okay, it's from the type Git, and the message is that user Peter committed something to branch. And you see the tags here, it was a commit by Peter. This way you can tell, as I said before, you can tell stories, because you can say, okay, there was a commit by Peter, and then there was a downtime, and everything goes wrong, and at some point something happened, and things get better. This thing is called Annotation Feature in Grafana, and it queries, for example, events in Graphite. And this is what I mean when I tell to add even more value to your graphs. But you can enhance this because the Graphite database is not really scalable. You can do another thing like log management, for example, with the Elastic Stack, Logstash, and Elasticsearch and Kibana, basically. That's because Grafana is capable to do these queries on events also on Elasticsearch. And as you can imagine, when you use Elasticsearch as your central log management component where all your logs are stored, you can query almost everything. For example, you can query SSH logins. You can query also things like when did a Puppet run happen and what did it change? Or did a package installation or update happen at this point of time? Or you can use Git hooks or your log management to see did a deployment happen at a certain point of time. So this way the graph tells us even more about what happened. Because we saw before that Peter did a commit that is not visible here, but it's a vertical green line. And things went wrong, and at some point there was Bob logging into the machine, and at this point things got better. So Peter did something, things go wrong, and Bob maybe fixed them. So what you know now is you have to talk to Peter and Bob, basically. They will get you the answers on what you needed. But what basically is the message in this graph is that you get so much information from only one graph. So you don't have to use 5 tools to get your information together. You can correlate your data just by using Grafana as your visual interface. This is one graph, and what I want to show now is how to create a dashboard with a template feature, because one graph is not enough. We want a whole dashboard with even more. And what I think, in my opinion, is the best to use is a templated dashboard, because you can, when you're done, just select a host name or a service or anything in your environment, and based on this host name, the complete dashboard will change its values to this host name's perf data. So what we see here is a Grafana 3.1 beta version, but these features I'm going to show now are also implemented in older versions. There is a feature in Grafana called templating, where you can add a query, for example, to Graphite, to get, for example, hosts from your Graphite tree. You need to give this template a name, like host name. Based on this name, you can imagine it's like a variable you can use later on your Graphite path. It's from the type query. Yeah, and as data source, I will just use the default one. You can even set when this query will be reloaded. I select here on dashboard load. That's enough for me. And the query will be as simple as Icinga2.store. And what happened now is that here is Grafana showing us some maximum 20 results of that query. I have here configured 5 hosts, Icinga org, SFR Web 1, and Ubuntu as some others. So based on this icinga2.star, it will retrieve every host name from my Graphite tree, and these will be available later for graphs. So I'll just add this template, and it will appear on the top of my dashboard. So here now I can select my hosts, my Icinga2 hosts in this case. And now I'm just going to create a simple ping graph. Grafana is splitted into rows and panels, where a row includes multiple panels. And a panel can be, for example, a graph, a pie chart, or any other plugin that there exists, or just simple text. I will use a graph and start with my selection of what I want to see in this graph. I will start with Icinga2 because Icinga writes always as prefix Icinga2, so you can identify where your Icinga2 data is lying. And the second part of my path will be a host name. And this $host name will be selected from the dropdown I have here on the top. So currently it's Icinga org. From here on, I can continue to services, or maybe better the host, because we want the ping check. Here we can select if we want to graph the metadata, like downtime or execution time and everything, or the pure perf data, where I can select the packet loss or the time it took to retrieve the ping. I choose here packet loss, or maybe RTA will show us more. And now I can decide if I want to see the value or if I want to see the thresholds. Maybe I want to see all the 3 of them. I can also add just the star, and it will show me. In yellow, it's the current value, and the other 2 are thresholds. To simplify this, I will just choose the value and go back to my dashboard. So now this is the ping check for the host Icinga org. And what I can do now in this dashboard is that I can just select another host. Yeah, maybe one that is not on the same host. Netways.de. Nah. Yeah, this one. And the graph will change based on that, what you select on your templates. So we did a little bit of work on this, and because it's easier to start with Icinga2 and Grafana and Graphite, currently we added a Icinga2 dashboard to the Grafana Net platform. So this is a base dashboard you can use just to get started with it, to get an idea on how Icinga2 can work well with Grafana. It will show you the thresholds, and it will show you also the downtimes. And in the future, it will also show you the acknowledgements you have set. It will show you a state and some base graphs you will have in a standard or default Icinga2 installation. So you can download this just by going to Grafana.net. And yeah, the link will be in the slides. So that was just a short demo to just introduce you on how you can work with Grafana using the template feature. To really get started, you can just download the dashboard we configured and uploaded to Grafana.net. It's already available online. Yeah, and that's it from my side. I'm not keeping you from lunch anymore. Thank you very much for your attention. Yeah, I hope you liked it. If you want to contact me or us, here are the contact details. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Those templates, let's say using business process module within Icinga 2, does this integrate with each other? Let's say you want to have a dashboard for an application.
Yeah.
Is this possible as well?
Yeah, you can almost configure everything by yourself. So if you have the service checks in your Icinga 2 installation that you need for your application, you can add every service check you have configured in Icinga, you will also have here in Grafana, if it provides performance data. So if you write your own plugins, which you need for your application because it's so special, you need to take care that you add some performance data to it. Performance data is a really simple format, so you can add the thresholds and the min and max values and the current value and everything. And if you do that properly, it will display also on Grafana.
It means like you have an application, let's say called mail, all those different servers that you
Yeah.
need for this application,
Yeah.
integrate into one dashboard and display.
Yeah, sure, you can do that. Absolutely.
And the second question,
Yeah.
if you compare this to the old PNP from Nagios
Yeah.
stuff, my experience is that if you add a lot of service checks and generate all those RD files in the past, you get a lot of I/O in your system.
Yeah.
How does Graphite and Whisper compare to this?
Definitely, yeah, it does.
Is it a better way, or how do you, how do you scale this?
The I/O will be almost the same, but with the benefit that you can scale Graphite because you can add even more service to it. And with PNP for Nagios, you have to you are just stick to this host, and even you have to scale the host by adding more memory or SSDs or anything. With Graphite, you can add more hosts and split the I/O to multiple hosts. Yeah, and Graphite Web is also capable of multiple Graphite servers, so you can add one Graphite Web with multiple Graphite servers in the back. So you don't have to choose which one you have to query. Graphite Web can do this for you. And because Grafana uses the Graphite Web API, it's implemented in Grafana. Any more questions? Okay, yeah.
Is Grafana capable of multi-tenancy?
Yes, it is kind of. But because Graphite doesn't have multi-tenancy, it's hard to implement it in a visualization tool. You can do this kind of on read or write access on multiple organizations you can create. You can create an organization that has only access to a certain data source, where a data source is a Graphite server. What we do currently is that we use symbolic links on the file system and start multiple Graphite Web instances, where one Graphite Web instance has only access to one certain symlink, for example, a customer. And we add this Graphite Web instance as data source for one organization. So the user that logs in and is in organization A has only access to only this one particular data source, which is one Graphite Web instance that has only access to a certain path on the Graphite Web file system path.
One last one.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not really related to this topic, but basically, is Icinga 2 capable of, let's say you have this check HTTP check every Friday with a spike, right? With a high critical threshold, for example. Is it capable of, like the automatic learning mechanism? Say, okay, did it automatically say, okay, I don't send a notification out every Friday because this spike is normal?
Yeah, you can add hard configured downtimes to Icinga 2. They are objects like everything else. It's an object. You can set a time in a reoccurring downtime, it's called, and you can set a time period where this downtime is always reoccurring, and you can do this like
by itself, right?
Pardon?
It doesn't learn it by itself.
No, it doesn't learn it by itself. Yes?
What I'm missing is the link between the Icinga Web and the Grafana services.
Yeah.
Is it similar to the integration from PNP Nagios into Icinga 1, where there's one link? Okay.
I cannot show it, but there is something. We have a Graphite implementation module for Icinga Web 2 that will do that what you're searching for. But if you want to connect Grafana to Icinga Web, it's pretty easy because when you create templated dashboards, it will add automatically parameters to your URL. And there is a module for Icinga Web 2 which can add host links or service host links to your Icinga web hosts. So you get on every host a link, and the parameters will get filled with the variables used in Icinga Web 2. So if you have a templated dashboard, you can add just a URL to your hosts that will be generated automatically based on the host name, and on one click you will go to we will get to Grafana.
Where can
Yeah.
you find it?
The host, I don't know, Eric knows it. I think dev Icinga.org maybe. There's a host action link module. Should be available online. Oops.
Any questions?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Great job. Thank you very much.